Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very pleased to be joined. My name is Stephen Cox. I'm CEO of Osiris Educational. I'm very pleased to be joined by my two colleagues today who'll introduce themselves.
I'm Anne-Marie Duguid, and I'm the co-creator of the World Educational Summit.
And my name's Jacob. I'm from the World Education Summit team.
Great. And so what we're going to be doing today is taking you through the World Education Summit, what it's about, why it was designed, how it's come about, who's appearing at it, what sort of things we're going to be covering, and how it's all going to work for you. So what we're going to do is open up the slide box and take you through all the goodies. Just let you know that we've got on the side there a chat room function. So please introduce yourself, say who you are, where you're from, and we'll connect you up. And any questions you've got along the way, we'll connect with those as well. So off we go then. The first thing is to say, it's brilliant to be picked up by Forbes and to Forbes to say that we're the premier event of the year. What we're trying to do with the World Education Summit is try and reimagine what it could be. It's not a virtual conference. It was never going to be a conference. You couldn't do something like this as a conference. So we thought summit, and let's see what we could go for with it. So the first bit that we'll mention here is that we're going to make learning the absolute centre of the theme. And we see this very much as the theme that's come out of COVID. We know with the struggles that we've had and what we've had to grapple with this year, it's been absolutely incredible, the energy of teachers and school leaders to get us through all this and achieve what we have. So we thought, well, what have we learned most about the whole of the COVID episode? And it is learning is absolutely central. Yes, you can have great teaching, but if the learning isn't happening, then it's not being received well. So that's what we're trying to do. And then the second element is, how do we connect people across the world? Because everyone in the world's tackling this differently. We've got different lessons to learn from each other and different conversations to have. So it says there we've already connected 37 countries. I'm happy to say that that's now 52 countries across the world. And literally it is going to be thousands, tens of thousands of teachers. I think we're looking at maybe 70, 80, 90,000. We're expecting 100,000 by the time we get there. So this is the first time this has ever been done in the world, to connect schools and college people, not just the world leaders. So that's very much where we're coming from.
Okay. And when is it going to be? So we're actually looking now at this being the 22nd to the 25th of March, 2021. As Stephen said there, this is something that we wouldn't normally think of doing if it wasn't for COVID. So how do we actually build on this, and how can we have a different narrative, some hope, something to think about, because your professional learning and development should not stop. We want that different narrative. So we've connected, we've got the best speakers, the best thought leaders, teachers around the world, and we're providing enough stimulus and learning for what you'll need for the 4 days, but also for the year beyond.
And so what we're going to be doing during this, sorry, thanks Ursula for asking the question about John Hattie's learning strategies. A little bit of patience we're going to hear, because we're going to build this one up nicely. So the first bit we're going to mention was the 3 horizons, because we think this thinking is becoming increasingly important. It's okay with us dealing with the day-to-day and what's happening and trying to survive that, but we've got to look to the horizon and say, well, what's going to come on? Is education ever going to snap back to the way it once was? And this 3 horizons thinking really helps in this way. We've got some of the experts in these areas to really help unpick it. And the first is the kind of current, how do we bring evaluation into the process of what's been going on? We know it's the biggest experiment ever run in education, as we've just been thrust into it on efficacy grounds and on ethical grounds. You've never been able to run this experiment, yet that's what we've had to do. So what we've got to do is learn and unpick that. What does that mean? How's that worked? And how can we work with it moving forward? So that's the first bit. What evaluative techniques can we use? What are the benchmarks we should be looking at? And what can we see from what's happening around the world where it's really been tackled successfully? And I guess in the same way, what mistakes have been made and how can we unpick those? So that's the first element. The second element is the third horizon, which is, well, what do we want it to look like in 5, 10, 15 years' time? What can education be? We're already hearing some of the reports that children don't want to be as engaged in going into school as they were, because they're seeing that as a much more controlling atmosphere. Professor Stephen Happel will be joining us on this event. He's run a survey recently where he found that children only want to be in school 2 days out of 5 days a week now, because they find them much more efficient at home. Now, what does that mean for us? What does it mean for lessons? And what do we want that to look like? So we've got some of the greatest visionaries in education to come and help explain what's possible now. And then that middle horizon becomes the most important. What do we now do then to take us from the evaluative stage to this far distant horizon? What do we need to abandon and get out of the way? How do we work with implementation, for instance? And this is why we've got some of the best professors in implementation, including Janet Clinton, who'll start to unpack that. What does it mean? How do we power up implementation? How do we power up the collective as part of that?
So how have we done this? We've reimagined the design. We've thought about it as we put together this summit. We've got the 8 stages, we have 10 themes. We've got looking at starting points for conversations and for learning. Impact and learning permeate throughout the summit. But we want pathways for different people. We recognise we're going to have leaders of all different levels and in different countries. We're going to have teachers at different points as well. We want you to make the connections, as we said earlier, and imagine that on a global scale with up to 100,000 people. Very powerful indeed. Learning, the learning's for the adults, and they really need that now. They need a different diet from the day-to-day. For students and for schools, for groups of schools as well, and for countries. So the way that we've put this together is built on what the high impact strategies, high impact themes, and then we're bringing the best people that we've found throughout the world, and we've really looked hard, that have got an evidence base so that you can learn from them and unpack them. And we're going to give you support on that as well.
So one of the things John Hattie said recently, just to pick up on the learning theme, Anne-Marie, it's not motivation first, learning second. It's the learning that produces the motivation. And that's the bit that we shouldn't forget.
Thanks, Stephen. And then if you think there in terms of the matrix, so how we've pulled this together, we've looked at the themes that we'll go on to in a little bit. So the things like impact, values, digital, we'll talk further about that. And then we've looked at the type of people, because everybody likes to hear from headliners or paradigm shifters. We've got the Sir Ken Robinson tribute stage, which we're really excited about, that we want to give you more details on. Cool Schools, we're just at the moment closing those, the applications are closed, we're in the selection phase, absolutely inundated, which is fantastic. So real lived everyday school experience, brave leaders, inspiring leaders. And in that matrix, if you look on the right-hand side, that's how the schedule started to form. So the full detail, it's still happening. We're still populating with the Cool Schools as we speak, but we've got about 300 speakers over the 4 days, and you can access it at different points, and we'll tell you a little bit more about that later as well.
So what we were really trying to do was to bring down this, there's the one element of the conference, what does a conference do best? And we know that's about bringing knowledge and new knowledge and research and practice into your base to be able to digest, to be able to use. The second element is this kind of festival element of how can we make it participatory so everyone's involved, everyone's bringing their own, and there's so much covering that there's plenty for everyone. And then the third element is, well, the medium is digital, so how do we make it a show? What are the best shows? And that's what we try to build off. And many of those are to have it at your own control, to give you as many options as possible as you're working through. So if one area isn't floating your boat, you can move on to the next area, and there's always something on there for you. And so the way we've done this is to break down the summit tickets into 3 areas is what you get. The first bit's the summit pass. This gets you the 4-day pass. It's 12 hours a day that we're broadcasting for to get all these speakers on. So you get that amazing content, all the Q&As, there's panels going on in there to discuss some of the topics. We'll get into those in a bit, including John Hattie and the learning strategies. The second element we're looking at is the Summit Central, which Anne-Marie's going to be unpicking with you. This is how we capture the summit for a year beyond. So we're using our unique professional learning platform, and all the content can be grabbed hold of there for you with extra activities added and things. So we'll unpack that one properly for you in a moment. And then lastly, Summit Hub. And this is your chance to participate, to pose questions to the 300 plus speakers there, to actually join in, to find other people, to be able to chat and talk about those. And there's lots of different ways in which we're going to having that working. So the Summit Pass, this is what it's going to look like in terms of on your screen. This is just the early mock-up. We're just working with the design, but you'll get access to all 8 screens at any one time. You click on it, then you'll have a full page in there. You can see down the left, we'll have the chat function running where you can pose questions. The Q&As at the end of each of the session will be curated by our own team of experts. So there'll be real expert questioning. We'll be pulling those through. And then what happens is the Summit then moves, that session then moves to online discussion forums. So you can pick it up with other other people who are in those sessions, and find other people who've got like minds or conflicting minds, whichever it is that you want, which helps your learning. But it's all there at the push of the button for you, so you can easily move between.
And then what we've got is the Summit Central. So this is the key in many ways. So many people will go to a summit or a conference, and they may normally just have one or two speakers or keynotes in a day. We've been a bit more ambitious than that. We've gone a bit mad, and you look at the headliners and it's your dream. But what do you do with it next? How do you unpack it? What's transferable within the knowledge, the thoughts, the nuggets, so that you can take it away and do something differently and something better as a result? And that's where the online portal comes in. So what we've got here is, this is an example, and it actually links into the top 10 learning strategies, which was raised in the chat. So if we think here, John's going to start to unpack that. And what he's also done is introduced us to some of the speakers, such as we've got in there, I can't see because my eyes are bad, Sean Kang, John Hattie, Alicia Adosebo, and a few others. So what we've got is that keynote will be chunked up, and the other people who are leading on those strategies will be chunked up within the portal. We've asked the speakers then to have key questions, and that will come up. There will be a link further down to further reading and resources, and to their website and to other research that comes up. And that will be curated by themes. So you'll know if it was a headliner, you'll know if it's a paradigm shifter. But as a school, as a teacher, as a leader trying to unpack this afterwards, you will generally do it by the content area and the themes. So what we've done is we'll do that work for you. Most of the speakers will be in there. There'll be videos, it will be chopped up, it will be done so we take the headache out from you, and we will give you guidance on how to run your professional development and learning beyond the summer using the portal.
So if anyone asks you what's different about this event, it's the impact that it carries and that lasting impact for a year. So I think Anne-Marie's already mentioned some of these stages there. So we've got the headliners, which are looking at the world's top leading professors there, and we're going to go through some of these in a moment. Paradigm shifters, these are people who brought significant change to education at scale, often and large scale in some cases. Cool schools are some of the best schools around the world and what they're doing and what makes them best. And we're not talking about the buildings or the resources they pump in. We're talking about what they do with the education and learning and how they affect the communities around them. Brave Leaders really unpacks the whole leadership agenda, and we look at some of the kind of cutting edge leadership ideas that are working out there. Inspirational teachers then will be really focusing, drilling down to practice and what you can do practically to improve your practice and your teachers can take on board. And the nice thing here is you can pick a mix. It's what you want and what's useful to you. High impact learning we've brought together, and we were very fortunate, Cyrus, with our connections with Professor John Hattie, so we've been able to bring together all the biggest names in impact and who's impacting on learning. So they're all at the festival this time, I think nearly all of them. Creative Culture is actually the Sir Ken Robinson stage, which we'll be unpacking in a moment. And then we've got a special stage devoted to early years. We're not running that for the whole festival, but it's got an intensive burst in there, so that was pretty cool. So if we start off with the world headliners, and I'll find a way to move the bus out of here. Yeah, so here's some of the world headliners that we've got on the stage. Obviously, Professor John Hattie, because of the associations we've got with him. And there you can see the rest of the lineup starting to occur. Carol Ann Tomlinson, she's the world, if you've not come across her work, she's the world guru on differentiation. And her message is so precise and so informative and research based. Wonderful to have. We've got Sanjay Sarma, who's coming out of, now I better get this right, MIT, who's been looking very much at where does EdTech move to next? Where does AI fit within this, if it does fit indeed within education? Many of you will know Sugata Mitra. Brilliant to have him coming along with his views. And we've heard so much about the notion of the school as a hole-in-the-wall school. But what does that really mean now, and how's that taken forward, and how's that working across the world? We've got Matabol from Egypt, and she's been looking at social learning, particularly, obviously, within here. How do we connect our communities of learners, and how do we get the most of them? Professor Dylan William, who many of you will know as giving birth to assessment for learning, but then since then, what's gone on in his mind in terms of moving what was initially just a feedback process to being complete teaching process, and how that works and how you can lead on that in your school.
We've also got a few other speakers there where we're really focusing on the values bit, the equity and equality. And we had an article in Forbes Leadership last week about this, which is absolutely fantastic. So Calwan Bopal, Pedro, a number of people here on this stage, and also on the paradigm shifters who are real leaders in the field. And therefore it's such an important area that we need to address within the summit. And I think the other thing to look at is, you might look at some of these people and think it's the usual suspects because they are so good, but each of them are going to talk about something different and something new to what they've talked about before. And that's exciting. That's going to be different within this. There's loads more. These aren't just the only ones, but these are the only ones we can fit on the slide. So if you look at the website, you'll see and you'll get a real feel for the kind of people and the rigor behind. And we've got some friends here that you will know as well. So Stephen, I'll hand over to you to have a go at that.
Sure. So we've got Richard Gerber, who's obviously picked up the work of Ken Robinson and the elements, and that's why we had to have him on board to talk about that. Professor Janet Clinton, who's probably the world's leading professor on evaluation and implementation in education right now. She's coming out of Melbourne University. Mick Waters, many of you will know. Dr. Bill Rankin, absolutely phenomenal researcher, worked with Apple for many years, but his message is so clear. People get fooled by what they listen to and what they see. They think that's what they do. And we've got to go a lot deeper and a lot further if learning's actually going to stick. So it's a central message, but he'll be picking up that within technology. James Nottingham, many of you will know, particularly if you're from the Baltic countries, with his work on challenging learning. And he's going to be unpicking solo taxonomy, which is pretty neat to work with. Jacob, can I just call you in here? And we've got Adam Hargreaves, who's going to be looking at the post-COVID era, but also what's happening with that. And he'll certainly be picking up that with Parsi Salzburg.
Yeah, and then we also have Ramya Venkataraman, who is most famous for founding Centre, the Centre for Teaching Accreditation. She's trained over 150,000 teachers in 30,000 schools across India. She's recognised by the World Economic Forum as one of the leading entertaining voices outside of India. We also have Shabana Bazid Rashik, who is most famous for her work educating women under the rule of the Taliban. A fantastic experienced voice in terms of educating from a point of real struggle. And we also have Denise Abulafia, who is famous in South America, particularly for creating a continent-wide online service for educating the impoverished students about English and literacy.
So great lineup there. Then we move on to the Sir Ken Robinson stage, and we'll talk more about the themes and things. Here's just some of the people. I'm delighted to. It's taken us a bit of doing, but we managed to get Sadhguru on here. For those of you who've not come across Sadhguru's work, it's quite an amazing view on the world and how it works. But one of the things he's going to be exploring is global consciousness and how we move to a global consciousness world where people connect and they realize that they're all connecting as part of something greater. And what he's done is set up two different types of schools. One's a home school where he looks at very strongly how do we start from where the young people are at and bring them through from that end. And then the second one's very much more how do we do inner engineering with children so they start to learn from what's inside them and learning as a whole rather than trying to dissect the learning. So it should be a fascinating conversation there.
And also, if we think about how we've structured this, and we're so excited about this stage. So on day one, we'll be opening with Think Equal Charity, led by Leslie Udwin. Now, Sir Ken was actually very, very involved in setting up this charity. And so what she's passionate about, the people that she's brought, which are most of the people that you'll recognise, who all want to share something of Ken's legacy, but the impact in reality of what they've done. Now, Leslie was a famous film director, and when she was making one of the films, she actually was so taken and passionate by what she was seeing and the injustice that she set up the charity and has spent her life then working, starting early with the early years, but really coming up with some amazing work that she'll share with us through her speakers. So day one will be dedicated to Think Equal, and we're very fortunate that Sir Ken's son James will also be opening this with us. Day two, as Steve mentioned, will be led by the Isha Foundation and the work of Sadhguru, along with some of our speakers on creativity, such as Graham Brown-Martin. Day three will be looking at well-being, so we'll be supporting the iPen charity. And so we've got some incredible people there, such as Sir Anthony Selsdon and a number of others who are really well known across the world in the field of well-being. Day four, we're going to be building and closing with that Find Your Passion and Find Your Tribe. And so we're working alongside Deborah Kidd and Richard Gerver on creating and coming up with a way to culminate the 4 days in quite an exciting way.
And then we're moving on to Cool Schools, which this is unveiling itself as it goes. Anne-Marie, do you want to add any more on that one?
Of course, yeah. We've been inundated with applications. So they've been in 2 phases that we've been reviewing them because some asked for an extension. So we're now at the stage of, I think by the end of this week, we will actually have contacted all those that are successful. The names of the schools, we've just listed a few there. They only tell you part of the story. There's things doing astronaut, the AI, planting trees across hundreds of countries. Unbelievably inspiring. And we've listened, we've read, we've talked to people. We're working with GEMS, for example. There's 4 schools that they're putting forward. They're doing incredible work. So how do we learn from everyone around the world that are doing something really special that we can actually unpack?
And then we're moving on to the Brave Leaders stage there. You can see we've got Peter DeWitt, Alison Peacock. And there's too many people to go into all the detail in terms of what they're doing. But these are people who've really taken inspiring journeys and are able to pass those journeys on to people and give you the collective knowledge that you need in order to be able to work with that. And similarly, we're going to pick up on inspirational teachers. Some of them will be familiar to Osiris audiences, such as Mark Burns, good colleague, Steve Engel there. But further afield, Professor Sam Twizzleton's joining us. And we've got people from the States over, such as Kirsten Anderson, who's worked extensively on impact and how that works within the classroom context. And then I think really importantly, we're moving on to high impact learning here. And this is really moving this agenda onto learning. And what does that look like?
And I think if you look at some of the people, obviously we've got Shirley Clark there, we've got Doug Fisher, who's been working on, what are the solutions with online learning and the issues with COVID there. Tina Ray is a specialist in the field, and we'll be featuring on the access and readiness and really talking about how do we actually make sure that everybody can access that learning and the way forward with that. So a number of people, we just can't even go into it. I mean, we've got early years, these are just a sample, but we know and we recognise that there's a massive need for professional development in this area. So we're going to dedicate 2 of the days of the summit to this. And then by request, we'll probably have ongoing summit just for early years. Panels.
So we thought, well, if we've got all these experts together, why not ask them some of the toughest questions? Put them together on panels where they've never been seen before. So just in no particular order, because these are still being talked about and being thought. So the first one, I mean, Guy Claxton, who's going to be there, came up with this one. Why not do rethinking assessment panel? So we thought, yeah, that's great, but why don't we? And we got so many people on it potentially, but you're going to see for the first time John Hattie debating with Dylan Williams. So it should be exciting. So we're really going to move this one around. So we split this into 2. One is rethinking assessment, which is looking at classroom assessment and how that all works in school-based assessment, and then rethinking qualifications. And we've got someone from IB there, someone from all the major exam boards to really talk about that one. What could it be if we were really to rethink and move that forward? We've got the COVID-19 and education change panel with, I've got to try and remember all these. So we've got on that one, Parsi Salzberg, we've got David Hargreaves, and I'm sure there's one other on that one, Pat Pakti from Singapore. So they're going to be really unpicking that COVID story. We've got a future of educational panel where we're really unpicking, well, what could that third horizon be? So we're very excited about that one. In conversation with Sadhguru, where a couple of the presenters are going to be working with me with Sadhguru to really unpack, well, what does that message of spirituality mean in the 21st century if it's a non-religious one? What is it about humanity, and what about consciousness, and where does that move to? We're looking at equity. Then we've got a panel unpicking equity and how that can work and how it can work within schools. The impact narrative, we're going to be looking very much at, well, what does impact actually mean? Is it possible, therefore, then to start a new, what we're calling a new basket of goods, if you like, a new dashboard set around learning? And as part of that, we've got Professor John Hattie involved, and we're going to be opening that one up with a survey which you can all have free of charge to use in your school and produce the analytics. And we've got an analytics company behind it. So that will be the launch of that one. With those great people in EdTech, we're going to look at what about this 50-year revolution in EdTech? Where is it bringing impact? Is AI something that's actually real in education? Is it happening and changing? We've heard a lot of promise of it, but we're struggling to see how it's actually impacting. So where can it go to, and where's it going to next? And I think this year has provided us so much insight into how it can be used.
I'm aware of time here, so I'm going to rush forward. I think there's a lot of questions, Stephen, about the actual tickets in the chat room. So I think I think we've covered quite a bit, but I'm just going to quickly move on to the themes, and then we can go into how you can access this, if that's okay. So very quickly here, we've got speakers. We've talked in detail now about those speakers. These are the high impact areas that we know that will make a difference at school improvement level, at district improvement level, and best for the actual learners. So if I just quickly put them in there, we've got impact, we've got digital cognition, so working with Daniel Willingham, Paul Kirshner. We've got implementation evaluation that we've already mentioned with Peter DeWitt and Janet. Access and readiness, we've got Barry Carpenter, and a whole host of people that are going to be working there. Values and conscious bias will be tackling equity, diversity, culture. This is from two perspectives. How do you create that culture of learning at your school level, and how do you embrace cultures from around the world? Tim Oates will be joining alongside Dylan and Guy on looking at curriculum and assessment, but looking at a new take of it. And talent development, we've got to do that now. We've got to love the ones we've got. How do we do that? And then inspection and turnaround. It's not your normal Ofsted conference, but we are going to talk about people who have made a significant shift in their schools, because it does have currency, but doing it the right way. So very, very quickly, moving on to what we hope will be the impact from this, or we know will be the impact. We want you to actually, as a result of being part of this, if you choose to be part of this, to align it to your school priorities, to design your professional learning using this, to plan the sessions and what that's going to look like, and we'll help you with that. Come up with your model, and ultimately, what will impact look like in a year's time? If you've been successful and you've got absolutely value for money from this summit, what will change and what will be better? Thinking that through so that you can really maximise this for you and for your schools.
Okay, so that's it. worldedsummit.com. You can find all the details. Someone's just asked there, is it plus VAT? It is for schools in the UK. Yeah, it's different depending which other country you're from, and depending on what the relationships are with sales tax for the other ones. But all that VAT is reclaimable for most organisations and most registered people. So it leaves me to do is say thank you so much for joining us. Sorry about one or two of the technical difficulties we had in there, but really pleased to have you. This will be available to share, and we'll cut up versions of it. There is a shortened version of this if you'd like to share it with colleagues as part of decision making. And we really look forward to seeing you at the event to join those 100,000 other teachers. Okay, take care. Lovely having you along board.